So the question I've gotten most frequently lately is, how do you do family worship with young kids, specifically young boys? Let's talk about it. If you're new here, I'm Rian, a Christ-following wife and a homeschool mom to 3 boys. Here we talk all things homeschool, and we will learn together how to use our roles as wife, mom, teacher, and homemaker in order to glorify God. So spoiler alert, it's not quiet, it's not peaceful, and it's sometimes not even that enjoyable, but we do it for 3 reasons. We do it, 1, because we are determined to make the habit. We want our boys to have a habit, and our family in general to have the habit of daily fellowship with the Lord. Now, obviously, this isn't the only time that we are fellowshipping with the Lord during the day, but I just want my boys to have that routine of meeting with the Lord every evening. And I just want that a part of our daily rhythm. The second reason is I think it's important to honor the Lord with what you have, where you are. And so it doesn't matter if you have one child who is docile and quiet and calm and obedient all the time, or if you have 14 children and they are all rambunctious, jumping off the wall all the time. I think we have to take what we have and set it before the Lord and do our best to honor Him with it, because He's given us these children as a blessing, and they're all in different stages of salvation. They're all in different stages of, life and maturity and all these different things. And He knows this. He's not surprised by this. So it is just my responsibility as a mom to take what I have and who I have and the house I have it in, and just set it before the Lord and say, we're giving you what we've got. And third, it is worth it. Anytime we can turn our hearts toward Christ, it is worth the time and energy it takes to do so. So anytime that I can take my heart, no matter where it is in the day and what's going on, and turn it to the Lord, it's worth it every time. Not just because I get something out of it, but because He's worthy of that. And I want my kids to see that too. I think it's worth it to take everyone, and as best we can, we can't, force their hearts to conform to what we want them to be. But anytime we can take our family as a whole and turn their hearts the best we can to the Lord and to the cross and to who God is, it's worth it because God's worth it. So here are just some key things that I like to point out. I do not have this down to a science because there is no science to it. It is simply what I said. It's just pausing and turning your hearts to the Lord with the little sinners that you have at your feet. But these are just some tips that have helped us along the way, some mind shifts that might need to take place in your home, or just some takeaways that maybe you can put in your back pocket and chew on when you go to tackle family worship with your own family. And the first thing is, for us, we have found that frequency is key. And so I prefer frequency over good length. So I would prefer to do 4 days a week of family worship that's only 15 minutes long than to have one solid one that lasts an hour and is like beautiful and whatever, but then we don't do it again for 7 days. I would prefer consistency over anything else. And that does a couple things. 1, that just helps you to build that muscle, that habit muscle. But 2, it shows our kids that it doesn't have to be perfect for it to be good. We don't have to get all cleaned up and nice and, everything go according to plan before we can bring something to the Lord, before we can offer something to God. And so our worship times are not very long, but at the ages and stages my kids are in, that's just kind of where we have to leave it right now. But we do it as often as we can. Another tip I have for you is to just put it in an anchor in your day. And so put it right after dinner, or right after baths, or right before bed, or whatever it is that works best for you. Ours is kind of a right after dinner thing. And so everyone eats and we've had good conversations around the dinner table that kind of prepare our hearts for worship. And so it's, we've had conversations about our days, and we do the high lows. I've shared with you guys, high point, low point. And we've asked everyone how their day went. And so if there's been anything that's been heavy on anyone's heart, we've talked it out. If there's, been good things that have happened throughout the day, we've celebrated. And so that better prepares our hearts for worship. And then my kids know, after dinner, we clean up and we sit and do worship together and we read together. There's certain things that we do in the evenings that they just know are anchors in our day, and that helps build that habit again. But it also just kind of helps your kids get mentally prepared if you're not just springing it on them like, oh, guys, we got to do worship today. And you're like, they're sitting there going, well, we have what? Worship? What do you mean? We haven't done that in weeks. But if it's just a daily, like after this, we do this, then it helps prepare them. My next tip would be to have expectations. Now, the older they are, the higher the expectation, right? And so kind of adapt this for your family, but have just some basic ground rules that are just non-negotiables. So if for you, it might be no toys. No one can have a fidget spinner. No one can have an army man. No one can have a baby doll or whatever it is. Maybe that's a big thing for you because that's just going to cause distraction or fights or whatever. For us, our rules right now are you must be seated, and that is not laying down. That is not slouching over like this. Everyone must be seated, all paying attention, because we have a couple older boys, specifically one, who just kind of likes to get a little too comfortable. And then I'm like, are you even paying attention? So you must be seated, no toys in your hands, and you must participate. So if you are called upon to ask a question or to answer a question or to pray or to recite something or whatever, you're going to participate. So just keep the rules simple, but make them very clear and stick to them. So while this isn't part of our family worship time, we do use this as a read aloud time. We value reading aloud as a family.
And so it's spending all of our time outside fussing over details and driving Cagney nuts. And driving the children nuts too. If they were kicking soccer balls at the Marble Thunderbolt man, he made a good goaltender.
And so we will work through a book together. So we may read a chapter of our book before or after family worship. We've kind of done it both ways. Sometimes we're like, well, we feel like we need to give our first fruits to the Lord. So we need to do that first before we read the chapter book. But then it's also like, but I kind of like ending on family worship because then we all go to bed, with the Lord on our hearts and minds. So I don't know. We've done it both ways and we kind of flip flop. But another part of our family worship is the devotional aspect. And we kind of go in cycles here. Sometimes we do just a not random, but just a specific Bible reading. We're just like, hey, the Lord showed me this in my Bible reading today, and I want to share it with you guys. So mom and dad will share something that's been on our hearts, or something that we've seen in scripture. Sometimes we'll read through a book of the Bible, or, use a Bible reading plan that they've been going through to kind of pull stuff out of and just say, oh, let's talk about this. Let's read this. We've also done actual books. There are a myriad of different resources of books available that you could go through as a family. And we've also gone through most recently a catechism book. We're not all the way through. The questions were getting like above some of my kids' heads. And so it's just kind of becoming harder than it was worth. But we go through catechism books also. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. You can switch it up also like we do, but that is just the devotional part of our family worship. And then we do 1 or 2 songs. Currently we've just been doing 1 because I have a baby who this lands right at his fussy time. And so we're just like kind of beating the clock. But we will either play a song on our TV that we know with the lyrics going so everyone can sing along, or sometimes my husband will get the guitar out and strum along, or sometimes we just go a cappella. But we typically stick to hymns. Occasionally we will do something more modern, but just the basic hymn, especially if they're learning one in co-op or something, we use that as an opportunity to, bring that song back to memory and use it in our worship time. And then at the end, we go into a prayer time and we rotate. Everyone has to pray when it is your night to pray. And so we just, dad prays one night, mom prays the next, then the oldest, then the second oldest, on, and then we loop back around. And this is down to obviously not my baby who can't speak yet, but even our 4-year-old. And we like to, we learned about this from Joel Beakey, I believe. We like to, guide our little ones in how to pray. So it's not just, okay, it's your turn to pray. And then they're praying about cookies and Iron Man and Spider-Man and, all of these things, which those are cute and that happens. But we kind of lay it out for them, the format, and then we'll do kind of like a repeat after me prayer with the youngest. And so my husband will, Father God, we thank you for this day. And then he'll repeat something like that, just to kind of show them how to pray. You can't just, praying is just talking to God. which it is, but they don't really know, they don't come out knowing how to pray. And so we just kind of like to train them in that. And then as they get older, they don't need mom and dad as much. I might, those kids who are just starting to kind of pray on their own, they might need some encouragement. And so we do use the ACTS method. We use this in our personal prayer life too, but the adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. And so we use that for our boys as we're teaching them how to pray. And then, obviously letting them know that not every prayer has to look like this for it to be effective. But my older boys sometimes my 9-year-old will get to praying and then he's like, oh wait, what's next? And so we'll kind of encourage him and, okay, now you thank God for everything we have and stuff like that. But it is a training process and it's a good work to do. So overall, I would just say, keep it simple, set clear expectations, always point to Christ, and just make it part of your daily rhythm. So let me know down below, what does family worship look like to you? Or if you have not started family worship yet, what are you waiting on? How can I help you get started in that? It's a very valuable practice that I highly encourage every family to do. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.